a quick trigger warning, if you will. This chapter is not for the faint-hearted. There are some gruesome descriptions of scenes in this chapter that you don't want your kids to hear. But I think that they are important for us to listen to and maybe learn from. When I got into this chapter, it sounded like it was a Wild West story. Outlaws on the run, hiding in the mountains, dodging musket fire. But it's not a movie. It's not fiction. It's actually about real people. Khoikhoi, slaves and mixed race, what they then actually called Bastaards, running from brutal conditions in the Cape Colony. The system called them servants or they called them apprentices, but we're not going to lie to ourselves. They were slaves. Now, before we get into the story, just a couple of definitions. The word droster comes from the Dutch drossen, which means to run away or to desert. And by the late 1700s, it applied to anyone who was escaping forced labor, not just slaves, but also indentured Khoikhoi and Bastaards. Now again, a bastard was what they called children who were born from slave and Khoikhoi unions. The colonial government called them free, but they were still bound to labor until the age of 25. So they were free by name, but enslaved by policy. These Drosters weren't always just desperate, but there were some times when they were also strategic. Many of them escaped during the winter, when farmers were moving their livestock down into the plains. And it was during that seasonal migration that people like Adam made their move. The land was quieter. The movement of people and animals made it easier for them to blend in. The rivers like Ongeluk's River began drying up, which also made travel a little bit less risky. Timing was everything, and winter became the season of quiet rebellion. These weren't just places that you ran to. These were places that shaped the story of who Drosters became. They even renamed the Cedarburg, something that basically means sour mountains, as if to kind of say, this place knows our bitterness. It was a reminder that even freedom came at a cost. Cold nights, hunger, betrayal, and always looking over your shoulder. Now, let's talk about one of the most telling escape stories from this period. The story of Adam, a slave, and Jannetjie, a Khoikhoi woman. They both worked for a man by the name of Joachim Scholtz. His name held a bit of a reputation in the town. According to other settlers, Scholtz was a tyrant and a mischievous disturber of peace. In other words, he was known to be a problem. So Adam and Jannetjie escaped, along with their son, April, a mixed child, colored, born 12 years earlier. When Adam was asked why he ran, his answer was very simple. I wasn't given any clothes. That was it. That was all that it took to remind him that he was nothing but property to Scholtz. And Scholtz didn't stop there. He once beat a pregnant woman named Sarmenki, who then ran in fear. Her husband, Jan Swart, fled too. Jan's brother Klassen joined him with his wife Lena, their baby, and their sister Griet. But hiding in the veld with a baby is dangerous for a number of reasons. Their baby's cries gave their position away, and it kept bounty hunters on their heels. In an extreme state of panic, Klaas ordered Lena to kill their child, and she did. But it didn't stop there. Seeing that, Klaas snapped and beat Lena, his own wife, to death with a knoopkierie. He injured Griet too. The rest were just too shocked to say anything. That wasn't just trauma. That was what fear under slavery looked like. That was what the pursuit for freedom under the Dutch could drive people to do. Then there's Rooi Meij. This man was something else. a bastard or a colored from now on, already on the run. He was spotted by a settler named Joosten. Joosten found him just chilling, sharing a pipe with another slave. He called him out and accused him of stealing some livestock. Rooi denied it, so Joosten hit him with the butt of his musket and then shot at him when he ran. But Rooi pretended to be dead. He waited for Joosten to come closer, then jumped up and stabbed him with a knife that he had tied under his arm. Injured and bleeding, Rooi ran again. But his story didn't end there. Rooi tried to escape once more, this time by stealing a horse. But the stolen horse was too familiar. He'd been seen around town too often, and it led Rooi straight into trouble. Suspicious locals tracked him down to the Zoute River, where they finally got him caught. And what makes Rooi's story stand out isn't the violence or the escape attempts. It was the sheer resilience. Shot, beaten, hunted, and still fighting. And it's not to say that he didn't commit any crimes though. He was the product of a system that was built to oppress him. Rooi wasn't just trying to survive, he was trying to live like a man, not a servant. And he nearly got away with it. Eventually, he was brought to Cape Town to stand trial, alongside Adam, another young slave, and Willem, his brother. The verdicts were brutal. Adam and Willem were sentenced to hang, and to be left on the gallows until the birds and the wind stripped the flesh from their bones. Rooi was to be whipped, branded, and then chained for life to hard labor. And another young slave was given 25 years for chasing freedom. By the late 1790s, the system had pushed the Khoikhoi so far that many stopped running west and started trekking north to the San, or even east to the Amaxhosa. In one case, the Inkosi, by the name of Brute, welcomed a settler who came looking for escaped slaves with a musket shot to the face. It misfired and the settler lived, but the message was loud and clear. You are not welcome here. These alliances weren't just about survival. They were the early seeds of the cry for Pan-African resistance, long before we even had words for it. Then came the Oorlams, a mix of Drosters, Coloreds, Khoikhoi, and former slaves who didn't just escape. They organized, they armed themselves, they built communities. They weren't hiding anymore. They were taking control of the space outside of the colony. The Oorlams were what happens when oppressed people stop running and start building. They became so strong that even the VOC had to acknowledge their presence. Some Khoikhoi tried to live semi-independently, forming kraals like the one started by Oude Rooi. But independence was fragile under a system that was controlled by the colonizer. They were constantly caught between settler raids and desperate droster groups who would sometimes steal from them to survive. Even when the Khoikhoi tried to stay out of conflict, the conflict just never left them alone. But the system wasn't only hard on the Drosters. It was also designed to trap even the free. Let's talk about Tunchi, a Khoikhoi man who worked for Pieter Jooste. He wanted to leave and take his wife Elsa with him, but Jooste said no. Elsa was ingeboekt, meaning that she was registered as a lifelong apprentice. Tunchi was technically free, but the system said that his wife couldn't leave. So he took this to the authorities. And guess what the Landdrost said? His wife had to stay. Some forms of legal unfairness have never changed. So Tunchi, frustrated, tried to get work elsewhere, but Jooste wasn't having it. He chased him down, tried to tie him up, and even shot at him. If another settler hadn't stepped in, Tunki might have been killed for trying to change jobs. How many of you feel stuck and trapped today? Or what about Yanaki, a young Khoikhoi boy who was taken from his uncle 5 times, beaten, chained, used like property? No formal slavery contract, just violence and force because they had the power to do it. This is what the Dutch called a free labor system. Over time, the distinction between Khoikhoi servants and slaves faded. By the late 1700s, they were resisting together, escaping together, and being hunted together. This isn't just a story about Drosters or disgusting slave masters. It's about an entire system that is built to look legal, but designed to dehumanize and to control. So the next time you hear someone say that the Khoikhoi were free, remember Tunki, remember Rooi, remember Lena, who killed her child out of fear. These people weren't criminals. They were caught in a nightmare that called itself a colony. The same way the Cape Flats is caught in a nightmare of a system that is built to keep them in poverty and keep them in a state of desperation. In different forms, we see the same things happening today. The lesson here for me is that unless we put ourselves in positions of true strength and power, we will always be trampled on. And that strength and power only comes through education. Build a generation of kids who are curious about education. Engineers, lawyers, economists, doctors, entrepreneurs, we need them all to strengthen our communities with resources and skills that can build, strengthen, and protect our communities across this country. Make education a culture. Stop telling your kids and people around you that education is useless when you can barely pay your rent at the end of the month. Because you know what? This is actually bigger than just a job or a salary. This is a revolutionary idea that can change the future forever. On that note, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please give it a like. And in the comment section, talk to me. Tell me what you thought about this. Are these stories that you have heard before? And if not, what do you think about them? How does this relate to your life today? And what can you do? What can we do to make sure that things are different going forward? Catch you guys in the next chapter.